Okay, people, let's get it on. Let's continue. Please take your seats and give it up for Jamie Caporoso.
Thank you. All right, can you guys hear me all right? Gotcha. Good? All right, cool. All right, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. I consider it a very big honor to be able to come out and speak to you guys. This is a different audience for me than normal. You know, I actually have a lot of people who train in the audience, which is very exciting for me because I feel some more relatability. So we're going to talk a little bit about how I got to where I am with this whole Keto Paleo thing and the evolution of it. And then I'm going to talk about some of my success stories with my own personal training and then some of the athletes I work with at my gym. So just a little background history on me. I got a Bachelor of Science from the University of Michigan. I do run a gym in Howell, Michigan, PFB Fitness and Training Center with my partner. So that's a little my background. So here's the fun part that I never usually get to include on some of my stuff. So here's a little more background on my strength training. I've been a competitive drug-free powerlifter for over 26 years, and I've lifted equipped and raw. Okay, for those who don't know what the difference between equipped and raw is, I used to wear the canvas suits, the bench shirts, the wraps, the gear, all that kind of stuff. And then I also lift raw, which means just basically compete with my belt and a singlet. Okay. Best gym bro bench in the gym, I've benched 660 at 220, which is a huge milestone for me. For those of you who actually train, know that 3 times body weight is a big goal for some people. Like I said, first time I've been able to get the shit that. Back in the day, before the internet was so popular, I used to be ranked in the World by Powerlifting Watch. I made that top 100 list a few times, and that list is a conglomerate of all federations. So the drug-tested, the not-so-drug-tested federations, the drug-free, the locker room federations, etc. I've ranked in the top 100 a few times. So, on top of all that, being a drug-free powerlifter and the fluffy guy on the left there, I thought at one point in my life that I was healthy because I was staying away from peds and I worked out. So one day during a routine physical, my doctor looked at me and said, "Hey, you know, Jamie, there's a direct correlation here between belly fat and heart disease." And I was like, who's he talking to? He knows I work out, he knows my history, etc. And that was kind of eye-opening for me. And this is right around the time my daughter was born too. So I started taking closer looks at my mortality. And brought it up in the gym. You know, you go to the gym, hang out for half a day or whatever on Sunday, big bench day, what. And you're talking to your friends, like, you know what, I'm thinking about maybe losing some weight and getting lean again. And it's met with a roar of laughter, right? And I'm thinking, all right, now something's really wrong. And you know, you've seen that meme on Facebook where the guy looks in the mirror and he sees, you know, jacked and tan, and he's got this big belly, and then the inverse for the girl or whatever. I go, that was definitely me, because I was like straight. And then I caught this picture, and I can see that I got this Dunlap going on super bad here. And I also noticed my neck and head are the same size. And I look at my wife and I said, "Are my neck and head the same size?" And she goes, "Yeah, pretty much." And I'm going, God, that can't be, something's wrong here. You know, that's not jacked and tan like I thought. So I started to think about making a change. And coming from the weightlifting world, I went to the resources that everybody had, which Muscle and Fiction magazine. You start reading all those articles, right? You start, because that's what you know. It makes sense though, right? Bodybuilders' job is to lose body fat. So why wouldn't you go to the guys that professionally do it? Okay. So I started down that path with the dry chicken breasts and the dry, all natural, healthy whole grain rice, and just choking it down, right? To this day, I just cringe when I see a grilled chicken breast that's, you know, kind of dry. And I started down that path, and I had a conversation with one of my good friends, and he said to me, he says, "It doesn't sound ultimately like you're just talking about fat loss." He said, "It sounds to me ultimately that you're trying to get optimal health or healthier. And I looked at it and I said, again, another epiphany, that's not the same thing. So he hands me a book called Neanderthal, which is kind of like one of the first generations of the whole natural human diet, paleo. Okay, so I started reading this, and being programmed by the TV how to eat, a lot of it was going into the face of what I thought. I was like, what do you mean you can't have milk? What do you mean there's no natural, healthy whole grains? You know, and I was fighting a tooth and nail because I got that Italian heritage and I love pasta, and I was on the GFH diet for so long being powerlifting that, you guys know what that is? Okay, good. That I was fighting a tooth and nail. So I started reading a little more. I think at that time I picked up Mark Sisson's book, and that made a little more sense. It's an easy read. It goes more like a story. And then I moved on to that other guy's book. What's his name? It's the guy the wolf guy, that guy. And I went on to his book, and stuff started clicking. And I actually really like the section where you compare the two, biologists versus what they're teaching in the nutrition department. And having the biology degree from the University of Michigan, stuff started making sense. So I started leaning into it because I'm not jump both feet first kind of guy, because I know I'd fall right out, especially coming from this. Okay, and I knew it had to be a lifestyle change because I wanted to be there longer and healthier for my kids. So I started down this pathway, and I started reading more, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to start trying it. I leaned into it with breakfast only because I could figure I could have bacon, eggs, and a bowl of fruit pretty easy and then go about my day. And then I started going breakfast, dinner, because those were controllable environments. I was home. Okay, I do outside sales for a living, so I professionally take people to lunch all day long. So that's a little bit more of a challenge. So, but then I eventually find a way to make lunch work. So if you're entertaining a customer, you get a steakhouse and get a steak and broccoli, right? That's easy, steak and vegetables. Or you go to a Mongolian barbecue and you hand them meat and vegetables and they grill it for you right on the spot. Or even a lot of those little Chinese buffets, if you have some control, you can find meat and vegetables pretty easy. And sometimes they even have a hibachi grill in the back, right? Not ideal, not perfect, not, elitist paleo, not elitist keto, but you can do well enough, okay? And in the beginning, I did well enough with regular grocery store food. I even take it to the point now where I go all farmers market. I also go buy my own, grass pasture finished cows and stuff like that. So I started going into it and it was very, very successful. So, is it gone? Better? Yeah? No? Okay. So what exactly, I know a lot of you guys come from the keto world, and some of you have come from the paleo world to the keto world as well. So for those of you who've just come into this world from the keto world, you're not quite sure, what is the hunter-gatherer diet, except it's those other guys. This is kind of what we're looking at here. It's more of a natural human diet, and the way Ray Audette put it in his book, Neanderthal, is if you were standing buck naked on the savannas of Africa and a rock and a stone, a rock and a stick, what could you eat? Okay, that's one way of looking at it, but it's more of a meat, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds kind of thing. There's no processed food, there's no dairy, there's no legumes, there's no grains, there's no tubers, okay? And yeah, now there's the 50 shades of paleo where everyone says, well, I can include this, and I include, my shade of paleo includes this, and my shade of paleo includes this. Yeah, that's it all aside, okay? But the meat, potatoes, or meat and not potatoes of it is, meat, fruits, veggies, nuts, and seeds. So what are some of the problems with some of the grains and beans and lentils and stuff like that? Some of those plants have anti-nutrients built into them. There was a discussion yesterday more about, someone was saying, I don't think we should have vegetables at all. Was that, there's a big percentage of this evolution of our planet that it was animals against plants. So you can see a lot of stuff, where a lot of these anti-nutrients come from. It's because they were survival of their species kind of thing. So there's a lot of anti-nutrients in that. And what I mean by anti-nutrients is some of these things block absorption of minerals. Some of them cause leaky gut. Some of them cause protein mimicry at a cellular level, cause all kinds of autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Same with dairy and stuff like that. So along that path, let me make sure I got everything on there. Different insulin responses. The argument for tubers and potatoes is there's saponins in them, and even if we did have them from an evolutionary standpoint, we have to cook them to hydrolyze the carbohydrate to make it digestible anyway. So we didn't have that huge of a carb load. So that's kind of a big arena with the anti-nutrients in some of the plants and animals. Now, one of the biggest arguments with dairy was that we didn't milk anything that big with horns, right? Okay, all right, so picture this. You're in that same savanna of Africa or wherever you feel the species started, some people say, Southeast Asia. And you see this herd of 2,000 to 5,000 pound animals with horns. And you think you're gonna run up and milk it to get dairy into this thing. And also remember, you don't have a bucket, right? So the idea of this is going way, way down, right? Okay, because you're gonna have to sneak up on this thing, perform this duty to get your milk, with another one standing right there getting ready to stomp you to death. Also, a lot of it from the paleo camp falls into a processed food. Big on no processed foods. These are all definitely foods that are usually processed in this form. So, what did I? All right, so let me back up a second here. So, after that point, I started looking for another advantage. I was getting for my competitiveness. I've been competing in powerlifting for 20 plus years. I was 40 plus years old. I opened this gym. I was doing a lot of more CrossFit style workouts and stuff like that too. And I keep looking for that competitive edge. Regular paleo took me to a certain point, but I needed to go to that next level, or I wanted to go to that next level. And there was still some underlying problems with my blood work, i.e. my HDL was still low. Okay. And I was starting to write that off as a genetic thing. I tried tons of niacin, no flush and regular flush. And I would come in beat red with that flush niacin. Anyone who's ever done that knows exactly what I'm talking about. You just blow up. And then doing all kinds of cardio. And I couldn't raise that HDL with a crane. So I read Stephen Finney and Jeff Volek's book on low carbohydrate performance, and then I went and read the first iteration of that low carbohydrate for everyday living, backed up with more science. And I was getting ready to compete for 2012 WPC Worlds, which is kind of like the Super Bowl of powerlifting, if you will, separate from like the IPF. And I said, I'm going to try this 12-week ketogenic diet and see how this affects me. So the side effects, or the effects of this diet were huge, okay? Now remember, I am not new to powerlifting, okay? My training is my training. I know how to get strong. I've, read and forgot about more articles on powerlifting and ideologies and programs than most people in this 26 years have even knew existed, okay? So I'm not new to powerlifting. I know exactly how Jamie gets strong, right? That didn't change. The only thing that changed was I put myself in this state of nutritional ketosis, okay? With real loose ratios in the beginning, I think I was going based off like a 2,000 calorie diet, 5%, 25%, 70%. Sometimes 5%, 35, 60. Depending on whether or not there was going to be dairy in it. But knowing what I knew about the paleo diet, I wasn't able to give up on that, so I kept it at that ratio. And on a world stage, in 2012 in November, I was actually in Vegas that year, I PR'd on 2 of the 3 lifts. Okay, and this was a world environment where I, first of all, probably should have been nervous. I was nervous, not as much, but I had more clarity, okay? My strength went up. And then, like I said, at this age, I was 40 that year, that usually doesn't happen, especially someone who's been training that long. But like I said, I PR'd on everything. I squatted just under 5, raw. This is just me and my belt this time. And I benched over 4, and I deadlifted in the mid-5s. That said tons to me, just huge. So that was in November, we competed, and then I just went back to a standard paleo diet for the rest of the year, and the next year I went into a 10-month study. So it works out for me perfect because January 1 to October 31st, which is my birthday, works out to be a nice timeline, okay? But this time I noticed something different at the 6-month mark. And I don't know how many of you guys, how long a lot of you stay in ketosis or have ever experienced this, but around the 6-month mark I get what I call super keto. All of a sudden I start feeling these bursts of energy and whatnot where I don't feel like I can get tired, or I don't feel like I get wore out. And it always happens at the 6-month mark. I've done this a couple of years in a row. And I've talked to other guys in Europe who, there's another guy over there, Gasper Brown, who does a ketogenic diet. He says it takes him about 8 months, but he's noticed the same exact thing. So that was one thing that I started noticing. So the next year though, I started making all these, if I use a cheat meal and I'm not training, it's dairy. Okay, so I start regressing and having more dairy. I start noticing that I start to get a little more tired. My cardiorespiratory goes down. I can't breathe as well. So if I keep real close track of my numbers, right? So if I'm doing, if I got a recorded Fran time and I know I've been training, this, and I know that it's like 5 minutes and all of a sudden it's 7, and I realize that, hey, Jamie's been hitting the Starbucks drive-thru too much, getting the heavy cream cappuccinos, and all of a sudden I got this fluid level underneath my skin, and not many people would notice that, like the Jane and Joe averages that we talked about, and stuff that I think even Mike touched on, is that people wouldn't, and maybe it was you, you might have brought it up too, that you wouldn't notice if you were, 25% body fat, but if you're down in the 12 to 10% body fat, stuff like this in the mirror, you notice. You're like, hey, I'm having too much dairy. I can literally got extra fluid on me. But the one thing that bothered me was my asthma started coming back. So I looked into it a little more, and there's actually, I stumbled across this, and I think in Lauren Cordain's book, The Paleo Answer. And there's a hypothesis out there by Dr. Bartley's and McGallish, so I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but they believe that the answer may be from a bioactive peptide, the casomorphins, that they are formed from a human and they're formed in the human digestive tract from these milk proteins. The casomorphins, in particular beta-casomorphin 7, can enter our bloodstream via a leaky gut, which a lot of us have because we trashed our diets, the first half of our lives with the standard American diet, and travel to the lungs and cause extra mucus production. Okay, you guys can read. So they also found that it's more likely in individuals who have had inflammation issues or have asthma. Okay, so if you are running into this and if you're on a standard ketogenic diet and you do metabolic conditioning or you're a runner or stuff of that nature, and you're running into this, maybe you have a history of asthma or inflammation and you find it creeping up or you can't get rid of it, and you say other people say they're breathing great and have all these other benefits, that might be something to look at. It could be something that's going on. Other problems with dairy, autoimmune stimulating properties, growth factors, and whatnot. I just threw that in there for extra. Sometimes consuming too much calcium inhibits magnesium absorption because they utilize the same pathway. So I'm not saying this could happen to everybody. I know that it's happening to me at some cellular level. And one of the other biggest things that I noticed is that in my gym, a lot of people come to me with asking about a ketogenic diet as well. And some people will go normal ketogenic, they'll leave the paleo over to the side. Some people go paleo and then maybe head into the ketogenic world. Every once in a while, I have someone that goes strict ketogenic and they are seeing no results. And then I'll say, all right, what's your diet look like? And it'll be, it'll be heavy cheese-based or heavy dairy-based. And I'm like, let's try a keto paleo version of this and take a look and see if there's any difference. And 9 times out of 10 so far, and it's usually the ladies, all of a sudden they start seeing the results as soon as we take the dairy out of the diet. Nuts is a big one too. There's something, about magical about nuts that sometimes keeps the weight on too. But dairy 9 times out of 10 has been the big one for me. And I found this in another one of Cordain's articles about how sometimes dairy, and this maybe not be a good example for this group because there's not a lot of fat dairy in there, but sometimes it won't show up on your blood meter in a glycemic index, but it may be producing more of an insulin response than you're aware of. And an elevated insulin response will inhibit a lot of this process too, regardless of where it's showing up on the glycemic index. So again, this is, for troubleshooting, some guys and girls are really effective on a real loose-based ketogenic diet. Some people still have to really troubleshoot the hell out of it, and this is just another area of, another area you can look, pretty much, okay? That being said, I do work with some athletes out of my gym. I wish Craig was still here. Worked with a fighter too, wrestler, and but very, very effective on a keto paleo diet. This is a high school wrestling kid, and some of the responses that I got back from him have been, hey, I used to go through a Saturday tournament, and they make these kids wrestle like a ton of times on Saturdays. Jamie, I used to get to the end of the day, and I was just barely holding on. He says, now that I'm in this ketogenic state, he said, I can still wrestle like again. What I do find that is key with a lot of the athletes, especially the wrestlers who bust their asses, you have to keep that sodium up, okay? We've had that conversations come up a few times in here, and it can be as simple as some cheap broth. Just get like the cheap Werther's broth or whatever, and keep it with you, a teaspoon, and throw in some hot water, stir it up, and a lot of times that's all you need. It doesn't have to get fancy. It doesn't have to be pink Himalayan salt with, whatever. It's actually the sodium, because we only can hold it at a blood level, and you end up sweating it all out. And especially, like we said, if you don't have that carbohydrate, and especially if you don't have grains, that's another mechanism of holding more water and more salt, is because if you have a whole gut full of grains, if your body is trying to get rid of it, it'll pull the sodium to pull the water to help flush that stuff out. So, this is another one. This is actually Daryl and Dottie. She runs the gym with me. She has kind of been the epitome of success with a ketogenic diet as far as her strength training is going. She smashes all kinds of world records in a state of nutritional ketosis. Okay, this woman, in a shirt, mind you, has benched over 400 pounds at the 165-pound weight class. Okay, she's the best training partner ever, because me and her go neck and neck. My raw bench versus her shirted bench, but it doesn't matter, right? Because if the 165-pound girl beats you, it's all right. You're eating crow. But she pushes me really hard. Now, to add an added bonus to that, the intermittent fasting thing is coming around quite a bit. A lot of people brought that up too. And I define fasting different than a lot of people have in the evolutionary template on top of this. So a lot of people say, yeah, I don't eat breakfast, I fast for X amount of hours. I'm thinking, no, you didn't eat breakfast. Okay, from an evolutionary standpoint, we didn't have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You woke up and went looking for food. Odds are you didn't have the ability to make a plate. Okay, now that's another thing too, the ability to make a plate. You were hunting or gathering, and most of the time you were probably hunting. And it was probably squirrel, rabbit, squirrel, maybe. And then you had to catch them. That's where another evolutionary mechanism of hangry comes into play, right? Think about hangry. Think about that for a minute. Why? You have to get mad enough to kill something.
Cardio.
In fasted cardio. And that's another thing. So this brings me to my point with Darylyn. She fasted for a week. Just a little kombucha and broth. And she PR'd in the gym on her lifts, on her Thursday bench day. 165-pound woman, didn't eat for a week and PR'd. Now again, from the evolutionary standpoint, that makes even more sense, because you have your, and she was ketogenic going into it. Let me preface with that. She stays ketogenic most of the year, just like I did. She went into it ketogenic, went into the fast, and PR'd on it on a Thursday, no food from Monday kind of thing. And on Sunday is our volume day. She smashed a record on her volume day for a set of 10. And like I said, you know, from an evolutionary standpoint, this makes all the sense in the world for survival of the species, because you can't start, if the goal is survival of the species, you can't start getting weaker. As a matter of fact, you have to get faster and stronger because you have to hunt and kill something. It's not working out on Monday. It's not working on Tuesday. You can't get to the point where like, you know, you have to get faster, stronger, and meaner. Okay. What would you had a question that was killing me?
What is PR? Sorry.
Personal record.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah. I know there's a good mix of lifters in here, but you're right. I should probably be conscious of the fact that, yeah, so she was smashing PRs after not eating for a week.
Probably should explain why you were with someone named Fran for 7 minutes.
Oh, and proud of it, right?
There you go.
Okay, so there's a benchmark workout in CrossFit called Fran, which consists of 21 thrusters, 21 pull-ups, 15 thrusters, 15 pull-ups, 9 thrusters, and it's just a real common thing to ask in the CrossFit world. You know, on this half of the gym, everyone's, hey, how much you bench? You know, in the CrossFit world, hey, what's your Fran time? You know, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, good point, good point. So, very effective for athletes. Taking it to the Keto Paleo level has made a huge difference on quite a few of my athletes. So if that's something that you're struggling with, weight loss, performance, breathing, that might be a consideration for you, okay? This is the second part where I'm going to ask for a little help.
Before you leave her, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So she got her PR and then she smashed her volume on Sunday, got her PR on Thursday. Did she eat Thursday? She was still fasted the whole week on Sunday?
Yeah, she started her fast on Monday. She went for a whole week, okay, and didn't eat again until Monday. The thing higher teens.
Really? She was pretty lean.
Yeah, higher teens. Maybe a low 20. I say that just because I don't want to get killed when I get back. Yeah, she, you know, yeah, because she spots for me too. Good luck, sucker. Good luck, sucker. Oh, and I misloaded it.
You're going for a PR today.
Yeah. Yeah, so that to answer your question. Another thing I'm not sure you guys are aware with, I'm developing apps to help us. Okay? My first generation of app, Ketocheck, was a real basic app to help newbies. My point of this app was to help people roll something over and look at a nutrition label and type in protein, fat, carbohydrate, that kind of thing. It's nothing more than training wheels for people learning to get into that environment, okay? Where I need your guys' help is Ketocheck 2.0 is going to be way more robust. Message me with ideas. So far, the way I have it laid out is going to have your traditional Ketocheck, but also Ketocheck My Meal in there. So you can look at your plate and say, 2 6-ounce chicken breasts, 2 pieces of bacon, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 3 spears of asparagus, and it'll tell you what the ratio, and I'm going to do a pie chart for calorie ratio. I'm also going to do the ratio of like the 2 to 1, 3 to 1 kind of stuff, because there's other camps in the epileptic world that hang their hat on that. So that's some of the feedback I got from them. It's going to have a BMR built into it, a very generic one. It's going to have customizable for, like, if you want to use the Ketogains calculator and type in your information for that and use that as your basis.
Will you be able to set by grams and not just percentage?
Yes. Well, here, let me answer that, because you're entering, all right, first generation of Ketocheck was you entered everything anyway, so you knew what the grams were. And a lot of times people will use it to check their MyFitnessPal at the end of the day. They'll type it all in. And some people are visual, right? They like to see, like the pie chart. Oh, I got lots of red, lots of fat, blah, blah, blah. This next generation of it will be, I'm going to set my total carb, or total protein, total carb, and total fat for the day, and it'll turn red or green. If you pass it, it's going to be your choice. I'm going to have suggestions for newbies, cookie cutter. We all know that it ends up becoming very individualized, but there's a whole population out there that needs a place to start, right? I mean, because how many times have you said ketogenic diet and you're in heaven? Now, the first version of Keto Check was the same exact thing. That I was thinking about like my mom or my aunt, who has never even looked at a macro before in their life. And that's kind of the training version. So if you guys have ideas or something you'd like to see, like I think I posted on Ketogains a while back and someone said, I would like to see it for a recipe. I want to be able to type in all the ingredients of a recipe and then say it's a 9x9 pan. Let's just say keto brownies for an example. And it's a 9x9 pan and I want 9 brownies out of that. What are the individuals? So the Keto Check My Plate will have that on the bottom of it. The other thing that I just got back, it's going to have to be in Keto Check 3.0 is, here's what my meal usually looks like, 29, 5 grams of protein, X amount of this. Build me a plate out of the foods I like. And you hit a button that says 2 pieces of bacon, 1 grilled chicken breast, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be in 3.0, because that was a brilliant idea. I was like, where was this guy when I commissioned the development, a few seconds ago? So please, that's where I'm asking for help.
You mean kind of like eat as much as?
Yeah, like I say, you can say, this is what I have in the fridge. Hit the button. What's that? Yeah, exactly.
If I could add to that, actually, I probably would be more likely to do a round out kind of thing. Like, I'm probably going to dictate what I'm going to eat, but I think a lot of other people in this room probably do the same thing where I'm going, what have I been heavy on today? Oh, I guess it was more on protein. It'd be great if I could just pull up an app and it said, here's a list in order of compensating for what you've been light on today.
Oh, yeah.
So you've been light on protein relative to what your goal was, or you've been too heavy on protein.
So more of a cumulative instead of a per meal.
Exactly. And then it just kind of starts the list off in a dumb way so that you can be like, oh, well, these are the top 3, I guess I'll do this second one. And then that'll hit my number without me having to do calculations.
That's a good idea too.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you do this, you bring this to this environment, and you're like, I never even thought about that. That is a good idea. My ultimate goal is to help us all. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's why it's only like a 99-cent app. It's because I just need to pay the program. So please send me feedback on that. I do have a book coming out. It's been a labor of love. There's a ton of things that go into writing a book, and anyone who's ever wrote one knows it's an infernal pain in the butt. Okay, you write and then you rewrite and then you throw the whole thing away and you start again. Okay. Other current things that I'm working on is I'm trying to establish a ketogenic index. Okay, this is for different foods and how it affects ketone level at a blood and acetone level. Okay, I'm testing both. And I'm also trying to establish a rating system with that too. So like, what do we just hand out? Keto bars. Out of a control group of 100, this is the kind of stuff they got. So it gets a ketone rating of, a Keto Check rating of X. That again is an effort to help people
If
find.
your says I can't eat keto bars, I'm not gonna buy it.
What's that?
If it says can't eat keto bars, I'm not gonna buy it.
So that's something else that I'm working on too right now. I'll probably need more help and volunteers with that at some point. I have a small control group started it right now. I've done an N=1 study. If you go to my blog, it's called Chasing Ketones. I'm not going to argue whether or not you need to hit a certain level. What I'm trying to make a point of is that you might not need to buy brand X to get to point B. Okay, case in point, my best results have been with regular olive oil, acetone level, and beta-hydroxybutyrate levels. So I'm going to leave you with this. One of the things that I found to be the most discouraging while dieting is derailment from friends and family. Right? You go to the break room, there's cake. You go to the party, the birthday party, someone says, oh, come on, live a little.
It's just
okay.
fun.
It's just one. And for guys like me, and I know some, I think Mike even spoke to this before, is that it'll start a food frenzy with me. I'll go carb shark. I'll definitely go that way. So it's funny too, because if you said, hey, I'm going back to school to better myself, everyone would support you. When you say, hey, I'm going on a ketogenic diet to help get my weight down and get my blood profile turned around, they'd be like, great, until you got to that party. And then they'd say this. So this is a meme that I came up with. And I apologize for the language. I don't eat that shit because I don't want to look like shit. I don't want to feel like shit or have my health be for shit. So don't tell me to live a little. Don't tell me you only live once. That's the reason I'm not eating that shit. Yeah, I've had it before. I'll have it again. But I've got goals right now. And guess what? Those goals don't involve that shit. So that's all. Any questions?
I always have a laundry list of questions.
Oh my God. It's all going to be about the data
The
app.
fact that you two are long-lost brothers.
Yeah, we got it's the haircut and the beard.
The first question is actually related to this. So I've actually been a math tutor now for 8 years in January. And students always try to give me food.
Right.
And I just reached the point where I had to be rude. And I think that that's something that you have to realize if you're eating keto in public. You have to be rude. You can be as polite as you want to be about the being rude, but I mean, it comes down to, thank you for offering me a piece of cake, but I'm not going to eat it.
Here's a good quick thing on that same thing. I'm diabetic.
Yeah, I lied about that.
Really?
No, I'm not. But you just say that.
No way.
You say, and you know what? Especially at restaurants, they'll hop to it to make sure that get that nutritional information.
I have lied to waitresses so that I know that I don't get Diet Coke. I just tell them I can't eat sugar and don't eat sugar.
Yeah, I always say, and it causes a swelling around here.
Yeah. Makes me break out lumps of celery.
Yeah.
Because Peter's still here, and I already poked at him about weightlifting and PRs and ketogenic diets and carbs. I just want to ask, when you did PR and you said it was 2012,
Yeah.
did you have any carbs pre-workout?
No, and that was the short experiment. That was the 12-week one. We didn't have any. We were really keto, paleo. Whenever I'm getting ready for a competition, that 12 weeks out is hardcore. I mean, there's no trips to Starbucks. There's no this or that thing, because I'm at that level where I'm going to invest this much time. I better do better. And I know, and I believe in my programming, and I know that this ketogenic thing and this keto paleo thing has, I mean, I always get stronger when I do this. When I am very diligent, always get stronger. At 43 years old and drug-free, and I don't do HRT, I'm not supplementing with any of that stuff. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I just want you guys to know where I'm coming from. Because, you read a lot of these articles and you're like, gosh, he's taking something. No. If you guys saw my free testosterone levels and stuff, you'd probably laugh. So, no, and no carbohydrate whatsoever. And especially when I get to that 6-month mark, that's huge. I do over protein feed sometimes. And I allow, not to bring up the bad word, gluconeogenesis to cut me off. Does that make sense? So if I thought I was a little low at a glycogen level, I'd eat a big steak or whatever, and every once in a while, that's what I do. I don't know if it's more of a treat than anything for me. I eat something, like people, that's another thing. How do you treat yourself? I go out back, I have a prime rib and a lobster tail, that kind of thing. So, but no carbs. Are you good?
I have others, but I'll let others.
You can hit me up and we'll sit somebody else and then we'll actually done it over if you want.
So how would you describe the difference between keto and paleo, besides clearly dairy?
Paleo is a hunter-gatherer grocery list, where keto is a manipulation of macros.
That's what I said.
And that's exactly it. And you know what? When I speak, I have a 2-hour-long talk on this that I do, and I say that about 5 times during the seminar. Because you're right, people miss out on it. If you're new to this world, the two ideologies are sometimes confusing. So it's,
We see a lot.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. It's very easy. So, one's your grocery list. And if you email me, I'll give you my current Keto Paleo. I have an eat, don't eat list that I've developed. Okay, and that's a very useful tool for people getting started. I say, here, use this as your grocery list. Just put it on the fridge, whatever you got to do. And then, manipulation of macros, that's the whole second half of my presentation. You know, does that answer your question? Is that a good answer?
It was excellent, thank you.
So why are you not keto all year? Just,
I go standard paleo for my birthday till January.
so that you can add in.
Then, so Jamie can, on his birthday, have some cake. But you know what?
The cake is not paleo.
No, it's a treat, and I don't know. But here's what happened last year. It didn't happen last year. I got 11 days into not being keto paleo, and I was pulling out all the stops. It completely went carb shark. Because from a cellular level, I'm thinking, it's going to end up as glucose anyway, so what's for dinner? I don't know, fucking donuts. You know? I had to stop. I only made 11 days this last year. And this year I don't even plan on doing it because there's been so many keto good recipes and advances and stuff like that I don't feel you need to. I don't feel I need to go off to quote unquote treat myself.
But so you were bringing back the carbs just for a palate choices.
Social pressure.
Not for.
Social pressure.
But nothing to do with that.
Thought that, you know, it's still in a bad mentality of, you know, treating yourself and that actually you're smashing yourself, you know. That's a big thing that a lot of people do in the competitive bodybuilding world and weightlifting and CrossFit is they train super hard and they eat super clean and then they ask for the most performance have you ever had out of your body in your life, and then you completely smash it with junk. And I always, the mentality, like, if your body was working for you, or you were working for that person or that guy, and you gave them the best 12 weeks of your life, and then at the 11th hour, you gave it your all for that boss, and he got all the production in the world out of you, and then he said, all right, we're going to hit you with some chemotherapy and some, just total crap instead of a bonus, you quit. Right? We actually have a blog post called Take That Body, and it talked about how we used to train diligently for 12 weeks, and then just the day, as soon as I pulled my last deadlift, boom!
30-pound blow.
Here we go. Cake and Jaeger, something like that, Just for an example, but it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. It should be 3 or 4 more days of perfect diet to help your recovery, right? So why did I? Social pressure. I needed to do this a couple of times to see. This year, I did experiments every year after that. 2012 was the powerlifting meet with 12 weeks. The next year was, 2013. Can I get leaner, stronger, faster over this whole long period I did? The next year was, can I get bigger and stronger and leaner by changing my fat intake but leaving everything else the same? Yes, I did. And then this last current year, people were talking about coming in and coming out, and it didn't affect anything. The only thing that affected this year is coming in and coming out is I never got to that 6-month threshold where I felt like a rock star, although I'm really close to it right now for my last time that I took a cheat or a treat day.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to be the guy who...
Bring it home.
I'm going to poke the beehive a little bit here.
Go ahead.
So I like to always go back to math here, and I use mathematical reasoning. If we're going to be applying an evolutionary paradigm to how we view diets, and we start avoiding foods because they contain anti-nutrients, we have to start avoiding all foods that contain anti-nutrients, and that would include eggs. But we know that eggs aren't really a problem if you cook them. And there's a lot of evidence that one of the unique things about humans and our adaptations is that we are adapted to eat foods that have been cooked. And that kind of eliminates a lot of the, or it confuses, I guess you could say, a lot of the anti-nutrient arguments.
Well, yeah, another perfect example of that is green beans, right? Because they have alkaloids in them, and then there's supposed to be the beans pesticide. But if you cook them, it usually denatures them enough where it's not a problem. Okay, so you have a starting point Or unless you had more to say.
Well, I have a little more to say,
Okay,
because
go ahead.
if the beans are to be avoided because they contain anti-nutrients, but then cooking them is okay for those anti-nutrients, are beans off the menu? Because eggs, if they're uncooked, contain their anti-nutrients. But if they're cooked, they're on the menu.
Right, but also though, if you overcook your eggs, you oxidize the cholesterol.
Okay, sure, if you overcook them. But
Yeah, so if you
eggs,
scramble them first, make them over easy.
you eat eggs.
Yeah,
Okay. But they contain anti-nutrients if they are not cooked.
right.
So what is the argument for why you
so
include eggs in the menu,
back-
not beans?
Back to the 50 Shades of Paleo. That's just where I currently am. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I'm not
Because if it was totally, if I could be totally, or you can't be totally paleo because some of the stuff just doesn't exist that we had back then. But in the I guess the spirit of, I see eggs as baby chickens. Okay, another meat that I can add to it. My friend Darylyn, she can't eat eggs. It completely inflames her lower intestine. So the side effects have not been enough for me to think it makes that big of a difference, I guess. Again, it falls into my 50 Shades of Paleo. I was very successful eating meats and vegetables from factory farms too in the beginning, but I've taken it to that next level now. Mm-hmm. You ask me this question next year, I may be like, can't do that, drop the eggs, and you know what? Bench 420. So I just where I'm at in my evolution of it.
I think some of this is just kind of shines a light on the fact that we live in an industrialized food system, that we need some sort of heuristic, some sort of simple pathway to get the lion's share of people through the doors and heading in a direction that's not a disaster. But then when you really dig in and you want some sort of cogent epistemological consistency, it doesn't exist. So, because it actually swings back to carnivory if you really want to get to it, because any plant substance has some sort of anti-gradation chemical in it. But this is also baked into cake, like palate fatigue. We can eat a ton of a given food, and eventually we'll get tired of it. There's two reasons. One, it has toxicants in it. Two, it has a limited nutrient profile, so evolutionarily we want to push along and go look for something else. The new novel food is interesting. It has a different nutrient profile, different toxicant profile. So you've got your next option. This is also part of the problem with our modern food system. The buffet is a perfect example.
Hey,
you can eat.
I saw you in there this morning. You can't talk crap about it.
Well, but you can. I could pull it up, but there's a great piece from Adam Rickman, Man vs. Food, and he's doing an ice cream sundae challenge. 8 pounds of ice cream, hot fudge sundae, gummy bears, the whole deal. Starts eating. He gets about 3 pounds into it, and he turns visibly green, starts bogging down. How does he succeed in eating this ice cream sundae in the allotted time? Any ideas?
Just throws up, I would bet.
No binge and purge. He gets extra salty, extra crunchy French fries. Now the standard dietetics model, my belly's full, I should be fine, but he actually went from a cold, sweet, creamy, palate experience to a salty, crunchy, savory palate experience. That salty, crunchy, savory palate experience overrode his neuroregulation of appetite, and then he could eat more ice cream and more food in total. And that's really the situation that we exist in. We eat like professional eaters. We can eat to satiety, and then it's like, oh yeah, there's the bag of Doritos up there, and then you get tired of the Doritos, and you're like, shoot, there's some cake, I'll have something sweet now, so you can constantly switch up all these palate and sensory experiences that completely overrides the neuroregulation of appetite. And whether somebody did, what's the worst performing diet? Again and again and again, the ADA recommended diet, because it's moderation. It's moderation, don't limit any food options. Which diet always kicks that diet's ass? Any other diet that limits palate options, whether it's vegan or low fat or low carb or what have you, you have to limit the palate options to a degree that you can eat to satiety and not beyond. And this all kind of weaves back into that to some degree. I'm trying to provide some lane lines, in my opinion, so that people can operate going from big gulps and Twinkies to actually some sort of whole food model and then start broadening it out. And it's hard to do.
Yeah,
it's a hard story to
and when I give that 2-hour presentation, I say if you, the 2,000-pound gorilla or whatever in the room isn't the anti-nutrient story, it's not the protein mimicry story. In this country, especially in Michigan, it's that insulin response story that I told you. And so if you can cut out the processed food and that insulin response, that's the juggernaut. That's the one that's smashing the hell out of it. That's like, everybody guys see that movie WALL-E? I keep bringing this up, where they show the whole by and large corporation and everybody in the future is just huge and they're doing this and blah, blah, blah. And I always look at that movie and go, this is happening. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, you see. Yeah, exactly. So I always say that, I had to lean into the diet, Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I live in the mountains, I did live in the mountains, and a couple of, the people in my community where I live right now that are obese and use golf carts to get from their condo to the pool just blows my mind.
That's exactly why.
It's just like food. It's just like food.
It is. I mean, in Michigan, it's brutal. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to get a big percentage of their diet from Speedway. I mean, which is a gas station. I mean, they breakfast and lunch. I mean, you go hit the Speedway and happen to hit it at lunchtime when you're getting for gas or whatever, and that place is just packed with people buying everything off the shelf. And I'm like, well, that's another thing. How resilient is the human body? Oh my God! The amount of stuff that we put into it, and they're still getting around. It just amazes me sometimes, and the recovery and stuff like that. But yeah, to your point, I always bring up that point. The biggest thing in the room is probably the whole insulin response battle and trying to limit that sugar processed food intake kind of thing. I know you got more.
Well, I do have another one. It's in a similar vein in my other contrarian question.
Go ahead.
How do you feel about fermented vegetables?
I don't have a lot of experience with that. I'm getting new into the gut health and stuff like that. And I know that getting a legit fermented food is supposed to really be a big help to that. I think there's a big percentage in this country who's smashed the hell out of their gut flora, okay, and their intestines and all that kind of stuff. I haven't got into it too much yet, but that's kind of the next thing on my list. One of the other women that I do my talk with, she is huge into gut health and fermented foods and stuff like that, and probiotics even. And she says, there's a lot of legitimate, and she's had a lot of luck. She's healed depression, anxiety, all that kind of stuff just by changing her diet. And a lot of it had to do with her gut health first.
The reason I bring it up is because you showed pictures of cheese and said that they were processed foods.
They are processed.
Cheese is a fermented food.
Oh, but it's the process.
But fermented vegetables are as well, but they're not off the menu?
Not well.
See, this is another point.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, so is cooking everything. So is cooking.
Cooking is too, but
cooking's a process.
But when we're talking about what is effectively the exact same process in one case, but is acceptable in one but not in the other, I'm questioning whether or not we're really following some kind of evolutionary biology model, or if this is just kind of a nice story.
I see.
I understand that on the one hand we can come to a place where the diet is very, very effective. But I think we need to be very careful not to confuse the fact that we've arrived at a very effective diet, perhaps without the best reasons.
Well, and back to like what Rob said is you can gotta point these people in a direction in the beginning, and then you can find your shade of paleo in there. Well, and you're right, and you're right though. And another definition of that was anything like go back to cooking, anything that you could have eaten raw. Anything that you could have had off the evolutionary timeline.
There's an evolutionary argument for why we shouldn't be cooking our food.
There could be, yeah, if you want to denature some of those things that are bad. Right? Is that what you mean?
No, well, we have adaptations to the consumption of cooked food. So there's an evolutionary argument to be made that cooking is a human adaptation.
Well, maybe from an evolutionary standpoint, do you mean, or if something would have had to have died off that couldn't?
Look at our dentition, for instance. We don't have the teeth for, ripping raw meat off of bones or for grazing on grass all day long.
No, definitely not. So yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for that question.
Okay, thank you very much, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you guys.
Okay, guys, we're gonna take a quick break, but this is a special break because we have recognized the people and the products that have supported Ketogains. We were supposed to have a vendor table all over that place. Right now we have keto meters over there with a special price. Ketosis testing, Steve Gutkin, sorry. So you can approach him and learn more about measuring ketones, but also recognition to Quest for the delicious cookies. Is there any cookie alive in the room? They're over?
I think it survived, yeah.
No, not one survived. Vespa, keto bars, there's one cookie. What is that? Can I have it? No. Maybe 10. Cookie Monster? No, not free.
I
But
just want to tell everybody that I watched that man eat until he started breaking out his sweat. He literally sweat was beating on his head at the buffet. It's about his 6th or 7th plate of meat in.
That's how it goes. For my birthday about 4 weeks ago, we were in Seattle. We went to a Brazilian steakhouse, and practically I was on my 3rd, 4th plate crying, and he kept on going and going and going and going and going, and like, yeah.
He had to take a little bit of a bathroom break.
Right.
so, well, it's a 20-minute break, and then we're gonna finish this with a quick Q&A with Luis. I don't know.
What we're going to do is an impromptu troubleshooting question and answers with a